Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Katie from That Minimal Life Consulting. So I'm a zero waste consultant in the Denver metro area of Colorado, meaning basically I just help coach individuals in how to reduce their waste and reduce their carbon footprint and to live more sustainably in general. So if you have already been around for a while, then welcome back and thanks for tuning in. And if you're new, hi. Happy to have you. This week's video, we're talking about just a brief update on my pregnancy. We're currently in the end of week 33, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an update about how that's going, and then we're going to jump right into some meal prep because this week has been full of that for me. We are definitely in like the nesting phase, getting ready for baby to come. So part of that, I feel like we need to have some food ready to go. That's going to make Kevin's job a lot easier as he's going to be taking care of me and the baby as I also take care of the baby and myself. These meals are freezer friendly. They're vegan friendly. I couldn't find many YouTube videos about that specifically, like vegan freezer meals for before baby. That's what I'm doing today. If you're interested, then stay tuned. So the crazy thing is that I counted how many videos I probably have left if I continue to do like a bi-weekly basis. And since we could have the baby anytime, hopefully between like week 37 and 41-ish, I think there's only gonna be like 2, maybe 3 videos left, depending on if he comes early or late. So that's really weird. I'm getting so excited, a little bit nervous, but mostly really excited. And anyway, I'm glad that I can share this journey with you guys. So the pregnancy update for weeks 32 and 33, not much new has developed other than the fact that my belly button now sticks out. And it's weird. I've never had like an outie before, I think is what you call that. Yeah, my belly button has always been like really narrow and just in. So it's kind of weird that it like sticks out now. But that's about it. That's like, I can't call that really a pregnancy symptom. Maybe I could. That's the only development in the past couple weeks. And other than that, I'm just continuing to feel like bigger and rounder and heavier. And the baby is definitely just really growing. So with that, I'll tell you guys the size approximately of the baby right now and then show you the bump. So according to my Glow Nurture app, last week, week 32, the baby was about the size of bok choy. And then this week he's been about the size of a pineapple. So that's roughly like 17.2 inches and about 4.2 pounds. I've started to notice a pattern within the past like how long? 3, 4, 5 weeks? I don't know. He's been, every time I check the app week by week, he has increased by like 0.4 or 0.5 of a pound. So I feel like that's a lot on a weekly basis compared to what he was before for like the entire pregnancy. It seemed so slow in the progression of him like growing and putting on weight and everything. And now it's like, dude, you're getting really big. And it's no wonder that I'm feeling it. Like it is a lot to carry around these days. So feeling heavier, but Kevin and I are still continuing to do our daily long walks and just going for as long as I can basically handle it for that day. Definitely don't want to overdo it, but want to continue to keep my stamina up, and it's just a really easy form of exercise while pregnant, so we're continuing to keep that up, and then doing some other exercises that are supposed to be helpful for getting the baby in the correct position. I bought a birthing ball, or like a yoga ball, so I've been sitting on that for a while each day and just trying to keep my hips aligned and my pelvis like in the right forward tilted position. That's supposed to help not only like strengthen my core, but also get the baby positioned correctly. If you Google things like spinning babies or the Three Sisters moves, I think is what they're called, there's other exercises that you can do, especially at this time, like these last handful of weeks, to just try to encourage the baby to be in the optimum position for exiting my body. So we'll see how that goes. I will definitely let you know. Like I said, there's probably going to be 2, maybe 3 more videos about this pregnancy, and then there will be a bit of a break, but I can't wait to start filming videos with our baby in them and to just like introduce him to you and enter this whole new stage of parenthood and sustainable living and all of that. So I'm excited. Anyway, let's show you the bump. All right. Yeah, I don't know. If you've been following these videos and my journey throughout this pregnancy, I feel like I look huge. Like, this is just the biggest for sure, like, that I've been. Not in a bad way. I'm really happy with my body and the miracle that it's doing. So I know this is completely natural, but it's just kind of weird to look at myself like this and it's like, wow, belly. So there you go. There's the 33-week bump. Okay, that's the update. So that's done with, out of the way. We're ready to jump into the rest of the video that is all about freezer meal prep, getting ready for baby, and specifically with vegan meals. Full disclaimer out there, I am not talented with handling my camera and doing other things at the same time, like cooking, and that's really challenging. I give huge kudos to all the people out there on their YouTube channels making like amazing cooking videos, meal prep videos. They have all these cool angles. I just don't have that. I hope this can be somewhat helpful to you, at least with the content and with the recipes that I have linked below and stuff like that. But if you're looking for some like high quality filming, that is not this video. So hopefully you still enjoy it. And then the other thing to note is that only one of these recipes is my own. So I've linked the other recipes below and you can see like who they're from. 4 of them are from a lady whose channel or website I think is called Sweet Peas and Saffron. So she had some really great vegan meals that were easy to prep. And then there's another like different vegan based recipe that's linked below. And then there's one that is just my own that I've made up with my favorite like breakfast burrito combination. Oh, there's also not completely zero waste in this. And again, if you've been following my journey through Instagram or these other YouTube videos, you know that I have a lot of reasons for why I choose to make certain decisions over others. Right now, for example, in the time of COVID, I can't access the bulk bins that I normally would love to, so there's a lot of things that you'll see in the video that I would normally have brought my own bags and scooped these ingredients from the bulk bin, but can't do that right now. So there's plastic packaging in that sense. And then there are a couple other things that I intentionally bought that are frozen, but they are vegan or just like plant-based companies that I am happy to support. I get into that a little bit in the rest of this video, but again, if you've been following me, you probably know I've just got different reasons for these choices. So it's not 100% zero waste, but again, that's not the goal. The goal is to just be conscious, be as eco-minded as possible, and then reduce your waste where you can. Just do the best you can. But it's ultimately really important to be able to eat healthy. And so that is the biggest priority, especially within this pregnancy. And while I'm accomplishing it all plant-based, and I'm really happy about that, it's not going to be totally zero waste. Anyway, enough rambling. We're gonna get into the rest of this video. One last thing I totally forgot to mention, I could have done the math a little bit better, but I think this gives you a pretty good idea. Going to Sprouts to pick up all these ingredients, I did my meal prep not only for this week and all of the meals that Kevin and I are going to be regularly eating, but then of course buying all the things that I needed to make the other freezer meals. So that is about 33 meals if you calculate all of the individual servings, and I think that it actually could be even more than 33 meals because some of those are going to serve like 6 people, their different soups and everything. Anyway, if you calculate the total that I spent, just divide it by about how many servings I think we're going to get, it's pretty affordable. So you can also see that it averages to be about like $3 a meal, maybe even a little bit less. So yeah, not the most perfect math, but just wanted to give you guys a great idea of how powerful meal planning can be and meal prepping, and especially like buying your own food and getting it ready to freeze for later rather than fully relying on takeout, because that's always going to be the more expensive route. All right, that's enough. Let's get into it. So right before we get started, I just had to show you guys this camera that I'm using. So I dug it out of my pile of saved technology things. I've had this for about 14 years, I think. So yeah, still works. Don't use it hardly ever, but it's becoming a little bit cumbersome to try to film some things on my phone if I'm not using my computer. So we're gonna use this guy today. This is the setup for the 4 different meals that we're gonna make that are just basically prepping everything, and then you throw it into the container, and then once we're ready to actually eat it, we'll just pull one out of the freezer and thaw it overnight completely. Then you just dump all the ingredients into a crock pot and let that cook during the day, so it'll be ready for dinner by the evening. So I'll prep these meals first and show you guys the process, and then tomorrow I'll be working on a couple meals that I'm actually cooking all the way through, and then we'll freeze. A couple of notes about the packaging. So for freezer meal prep, it's a lot easier to go with canned items rather than getting, beans or something from dry bulk and then soaking them. So I'm using the canned stuff, and then aluminum cans are also infinitely recyclable. So as long as you just clean them out really well and then put them in your recycling, you're pretty much good to go. And then with COVID right now, you can't bag up your own items from the bulk bins. So I got my red lentils from bulk, and I'll just store them in here the way that they came and then reuse that plastic bag afterwards. All of these I was still able to use my own bags for produce. And then tofu, I mean, it's pretty hard to find that without packaging, but it's great for vegan dishes, and plant-based dishes are better for the environment anyway. And then that's basically it, except for a couple frozen packages that I'm keeping in the freezer until I'm ready to add them into the dish. So over here I've got my 4 dishes ready to go. I'm choosing to use glass with the lids that'll go on top rather than throwaway Ziploc bags. It'll take up a little bit more room in the freezer, but I think ultimately it's reusable and a lot more sustainable. I've also just labeled them with some tape. So it has what the dish is and then the basic instructions. So we've got chickpea butternut squash fajitas. We're gonna have butternut squash lentil curry over here. And then we've got some African peanut stew, and then also a vegan Tikki masala will go into this one. Each of the recipes that I'll be working with are linked below, so you'll be able to find them for yourself. We're starting now with the chickpea butternut squash fajitas. So this one, I've already layered about 4 cups of frozen butternut squash, and honestly I just went with the frozen package this time because butternut squash is really hard to cut into, and so as a time saver and an effort saver, I went ahead with frozen organic package. But that's about 4 cups layered in there, and then what I'm going to add into it in just a minute, I've got my chickpeas that were drained and rinsed, and my can is all rinsed out, so that's ready to go to the recycling. And then over here I've sliced up 2 bell peppers and only half of the red onion. The recipe does call for an entire onion, but Kevin and I just don't typically eat that much onion. So we decided to go with half of it, and I'll use the other half in one of the other recipes coming up. And all of our food scraps, by the way, are going into this little container. By the time I'm done, it'll probably be full, and we'll take it out to our compost bin in the backyard. Alright, I just finished adding the spices and other things into this glass container, as well as all the ingredients that I showed you before. What I added here, I'm just looking at my recipe that's on my phone. I'd rather do that than print it off, but do whatever works best for you. But there's basically just a tablespoon of maple syrup in here, half a teaspoon of salt, some chili powder, cumin, paprika, garlic powder, and then a little bit of olive oil and the juice from one lime squeezed about. So now I'm just gonna add the lid onto this and give it a pretty good shake before putting it into the freezer, and that one is prepped and ready to go. The next dish we're moving on to is the vegan Tikki masala. So starting with the base, we've got our can of tomato sauce in here, and then about a cup of coconut-based yogurt, and then all the spices that are in there right now. There's some cumin, paprika, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, ginger, and cinnamon. I am not adding the garam masala just because I didn't have it, but basically I'm going to stir all of this together, and then after that I will just add the tofu. The tofu is super easy since this is going to be going into a crock pot eventually. I didn't even have to press the tofu to get, you know, all of the moisture out of it, so I just drained, you know, as much as I could out of the package and then just cut it up into little cubes. That's it as far as preparation goes for this meal, so I'm just gonna stir all of this together and get the tofu fully coated. But basically this, once it's completely thawed out, will just go into a crock pot for about 5 hours on low, and then the last step would be to add some like cauliflower and peas into the crock pot and cook it on low still for 1 more hour, and then it's basically done, and you can serve it with naan bread or you can serve it with rice. But this one was a really easy meal to prep. This dish is the butternut squash lentil curry. So in the base, just like the first recipe that we started with, I've got about 4 cups of the frozen butternut squash in there. And then I added 2 cups of these dried red lentils. So those are the bulkiest of items that are going in. Plus I'm gonna add about half of this yellow onion that I've chopped up. So note to self for next time, I'm gonna need a slightly bigger container if I'm gonna prepare everything as planned. I just added a little piece of tape to the bottom. It'll be totally fine, but when this is thawed and ready to go into the crock pot, the original recipe is you just add it in with 3 cups of veggie broth, but we will also be adding 1 can of coconut milk because that could not fit into this container. So, but I did get my can of diced tomatoes in here, and then I've just got the spices and the garlic right on top. So there's about 2 cloves of garlic minced in there, and then there's some ginger, turmeric, cumin, salt, and I left out curry powder and garam masala just because I don't have it, but I think it's still gonna taste just fine. So this one is now ready to go. I'll put the lid on that very tightly, and yeah, we'll just add a couple extra things into the crock pot when it's time to actually cook it. Oh, and then I think this gets served with like rice or bread or something, whatever you choose once it's done. Okay, so the last of the non-cook frozen meals is the African peanut stew. And so this one you'll also just thaw overnight and then you just cook it in a crock pot. And I had the same problem as the last dish that I just made, where this container is just slightly not big enough. So I can add almost all the ingredients in here, but basically when you go to put it in the crock pot, the original recipe just calls for you to also add 4 cups of veggie broth, but we're gonna also add in the 1 can of diced tomatoes because that just definitely couldn't fit in here. So what I've got in there so far is just about 2 medium sweet potatoes that I've diced, and then I went ahead and used almond butter, but you can use peanut butter. That's what the recipe has. So that's what's in there at the moment. And then I'm about to add my can of chickpeas that I've drained and rinsed once more. So that's ready to go. That's ready to go into the recycling. And then the other half of the yellow onion that I saved, I don't think I'm even gonna put all of this into it. So I'll put some of the onion in there, whatever fits basically, and then I'll save the rest of it and we'll use it in a different meal. And then after that, it's basically just the spices and garlic, so I'll show you the end result. Okay, end result. This is super packed, so I would definitely recommend getting a bigger container. But all I added to the top once I got those chickpeas and onions in there were just, looking at my recipe real quick. So some minced garlic, about 4 cloves of that, and then also added in some cayenne pepper, cumin, salt, and ginger, and I believe that was it. I'm gonna stuff a lid on here and we will call that good for now. Okay, it is day 2 of this freezer vegan meal prep before baby. So I'm gonna be working on some baked oatmeal that will have some protein in it and some fruit, and it'll be a really nice, like, easy breakfast to pull out and thaw, or just like a dessert or whatever we want, really. So in this, yeah, there's a lot of packaging with some of the bulk stuff that I can sadly not buy in my own bags right now due to COVID, but it's just the world we live in for the time being. So normally would have had my rolled oats in my own bags, ground flaxseed as well, and yeah. But anyway, got some ground flaxseed, some almond milk that I just made, and I also just made a video on how to do this. I used a really cool hack that I found online that allows you to make almond milk without soaking the almonds overnight or straining. So super easy, but that's on my Patreon if you guys are interested in watching that. And then there's gonna be a little bit of maple syrup added, the rolled oats as the base, and then basic, you know, salt, baking powder, vanilla extract. I am gonna add a few blueberries, but the main fruit that is gonna be featured in this baked oatmeal are Palisade peaches. So they are grown locally in Colorado, and we got this gigantic box of them. So I'm gonna be using up a bunch of these. I'll probably make multiple batches today and freeze a whole bunch of the baked oatmeal bars. So we're gonna use up these delicious peaches, and they smell so, so good. And then of course we're gonna eat just a bunch of them throughout the week as well. So what I've got going so far is just mixing together my dry ingredients in this bowl. So I've got the rolled oats, the baking powder, and the salt, and then I'm about to stir that up, and then I'm going to be adding in the wet ingredients, which will include the almond milk, a little bit of syrup, vanilla extract, and then this is like an egg substitute. So you basically just whip together some flaxseed, ground flaxseed, with water, and you whip it up just like an egg basically, and then just let it sit for a bit so it's kind of like becoming more gelatinous in its structure. So gonna add all of that together in here, mix it up, then I'll be adding in the fruit, and it'll go into the baking pan next. This is already looking so good and smelling so good. So I mixed together the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients that I showed you before. And then I've added in the fruit, and I'm just gonna give that another mix. And then the next step, and the last step really, is to just transfer it into a baking pan. And then I'm gonna top with the sliced peaches I've got over here, and then we'll just let it bake. This looks so good. So I just basically put it into the baking pan. It's all layered in there and smoothed out the top, and then added these sliced peaches and sprinkled it with a little bit of cinnamon, because why not? It looks nice and it smells nice, and I bet it'll taste really great. So now I'm just gonna put this in the oven, which has been preheated to 375, and then we'll bake this for about 40 minutes, or at least check it at 40, and then maybe go till 45, but that should do it. Voila! This is the finished product. I ended up keeping it in the oven for the full 45 minutes. So I checked it at 40 and then I wanted it to get just a little bit crispier around the edges. So now I'm just letting it cool and kind of firm up a bit on my cooling rack. And then after that, I plan to just cut into it and make little squares, and then I'll just layer those into either a glass container or a reusable freezer bag, and then just store it in the freezer for like up to 3 months. And I'm definitely going to make more of this as well. So this is the first of many batches, and we'll use up all of those peaches that we've got from Palisade. There's a nice little freezer-friendly, vegan-friendly breakfast or dessert to have on hand. So I realized that the last meal that I'm going to prep, at least for today, I've already done a video showing you the entire process of how I make my favorite breakfast burritos, and this is a recipe that I've just kind of like come up with myself, took bits and pieces from other recipes that I liked and adapted it. So I will link below in the description the video. That was just from a few weeks ago. It's what I ate during my, or what I eat during my 3rd trimester. Something like that is the video. So I'll link that below, and that has the entire process documented of these breakfast burritos, but I will show you just like a quick glance at the ingredients, and then I'll show you the end product as well. So this is essentially what's going to go into the breakfast burritos. So I'm gonna bake a sweet potato, and then I'm also gonna have some black beans here, some tofu scramble that I'm gonna create with some other spices like turmeric and chili powder and things like that. Some diced up onions, some spinach. This is plant-based, so meatless sausage, which is just a nice touch to add in for flavor and a little bit of extra protein. But even without that, like between the tofu and the black beans, it's definitely protein packed as it is. And then just gonna use these whole wheat tortillas to wrap everything up, and then we'll have a bunch of burritos that we can put into the freezer. So this is what I've got ready for assembly now. So I've got my tofu scramble with some vegan sausage and black beans, all the spices, some spinach in there. I didn't use, I think, even half the bag of the vegan sausage, so it's nice to be able to spread that out into multiple dishes if I can, since it's kind of a commodity. And then I've got my baked sweet potato over here ready to mash up a little bit. And then I've got a stack of warm tortillas. I've heard the key to rolling them up better, rolling up burritos better, is to make sure that they're warm. So I don't know, I don't always remember to do that, but I'm gonna give it a try. And then I'll be able to just kind of stack them up over here and let them cool until I'm ready to put them into a freezer safe either bag or container. Okay, we're just about done here. So I ended up changing my mind with the burritos. Once I rolled them up, I put them into aluminum foil instead. It was just easier and made more sense for this type of a freezer food. And being wrapped in a tortilla, it's keeping the aluminum foil super clean. So I do reuse my aluminum foil as much as possible. So the sheets of aluminum foil will be used and reused. And then eventually, when they can't be anymore, as long as they're still clean or I can rinse them off, then aluminum is infinitely recyclable, so I will plan to recycle those. So anyway, I have 6 total burritos, just labeled with a basic date. Those are ready to go into the freezer. They're just about done cooling. And then I ended up with a little bit of leftover tofu scramble, no leftover sweet potatoes. So this will probably be either 1 big serving or 2 servings. So I just put that into a container, labeled it with some tape, and I'll freeze that as well, and it'll just be easy to reheat and have as a dish on its own. And then finally, I've gone back to the baked peach and blueberry oatmeal. So I let that cool as I was working on the burritos and then cut them into squares. And then I'm just gonna take this whole tray and put it directly into my freezer and just let them kind of solidify better for a while. And then I'm gonna take those individual squares and then put them into one of my reusable freezer bags. So that way they don't really stick to each other, and because if they're already individually frozen, kind of like a flash freeze, then I'll be able to stick them into this bag, freeze the whole bag, and it'll just be a lot easier to work with. There you have it. Like I said, nothing fancy at all, but I hope that it was somewhat helpful to you, just giving you some ideas to run with as far as the content goes. Be sure to check out the description so that you can get links to the exact recipes. You'll also see the link to the previous video that I referenced where I go through more of the process of my favorite breakfast burrito recipe. And then I've also got my Patreon linked there below, and there's a special video that I put up just for patrons that has a new hack that I discovered for creating almond milk super easily. I mean, it's not hard to do it with soaking almonds overnight and then blending everything and straining it. It's not that hard, but it is time consuming. So with this hack, it drastically reduces the amount of time. So if you're interested in seeing that one, then head on over to my Patreon, and of course I would really appreciate any support so that I can continue to make this kind of content for you guys. As always, if you're interested in anything specific that has to do with pregnancy or sustainable living, please don't hesitate to reach out. Just message me or put something in the comments and I will be happy to get back to you. And then in the next few weeks, we'll just see how things go. But I can't wait to eventually introduce you to our baby and the next chapter of this life that we're starting together. Exciting stuff. I hope that you're doing well, that you have a great week, and I will talk to you guys soon.